A blast shook the Denobulan escape pod as it spiraled out of control, trailing smoke and flames. Inside, Princess Jackson gripped the controls, her heart pounding as she struggled to keep the crippled craft from disintegrating in the planet's atmosphere. The pod, barely larger than a coffin, shuddered violently as it plummeted towards the surface of New Eden, a distant human colony light years from Earth. Commander Darren Hicks, a battle-hardened soldier with a mysterious past, watched the alien craft streak across the sky, a fiery comet against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. As the escape pod slammed into the ground just beyond the colony's perimeter, Hicks mobilized his security team, unsure if this was a prelude to an invasion or a desperate plea for help. Tensions ran high as the human colonists surrounded the wreckage, weapons drawn and nerves frayed. Hicks approached cautiously, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. The pod's hatch hissed open, revealing a battered and bleeding figure within. Princess Jackson, heir to the Denobulan throne, stumbled out, her once regal dress torn and scorched. She locked eyes with Hicks, a mix of fear and determination etched on her alien features. In halting English, Jackson pleaded for asylum, claiming her people were on the brink of annihilation at the hands of the ruthless Talaxians. Hicks, skeptical but intrigued, ordered her placed under guard in the colony's medical facility until he could verify her story. But as he delved deeper into the princess's tale of galactic war and desperate last stands, Hicks realized that the fate of his small colony, and perhaps all of humanity, hung in the balance. With a Talaxian scout ship already in orbit and time running out, Hicks faced an impossible choice: risk everything to help a stranded alien and her besieged people, or keep his head down and pray that the coming storm would pass them by. One thing was certain: the future of New Eden and the fate of two unlikely allies would be decided in the coming days. As the Talaxians' scout ship loomed ominously in the skies above New Eden, Commander Hicks wasted no time in contacting Earth to report the dire situation. His fingers flew across the comm panel, urgency etched into every movement as he relayed the arrival of Princess Jackson and the impending threat to the colony. Light years away, the message reached the heart of the United Earth Federation, spurring an immediate response. The USS Odyssey, a sleek, state-of-the-art warship, was dispatched under the command of Captain Jace Riker. A decorated war hero with an unwavering focus and a reputation for unwavering courage, Riker was tasked with the critical mission of protecting Jackson and assessing the true extent of the Talaxians' menace. The Odyssey sliced through the void of space, its powerful engines propelling it towards New Eden with breathtaking speed. As the ship entered orbit, Riker beamed down to the colony's surface, his boots crunching against the dusty terrain. He strode purposefully towards the medical facility where Princess Jackson was being held, his teeth clenched. Hicks greeted Riker with a firm handshake, the two men sizing each other up in a moment of silent appraisal. Despite the tense circumstances, a flicker of respect passed between them. Two battle-hardened soldiers recognizing a kindred spirit. Together they entered the facility, ready to confront the enigmatic alien princess. Jackson, her wounds now cleaned and bandaged, sat up as the men approached. Her eyes, a mesmerizing shade of violet, locked onto Riker's, and for a brief moment he found himself captivated by the depth of emotion he saw there. Fear, yes, but also an unyielding strength and fierce intelligence. In a voice that resonated with quiet authority, Jackson began to share her knowledge of the Talaxians, revealing their military might and their insatiable hunger for conquest. She spoke of their advanced technology, their ruthless tactics, and their unrelenting drive to dominate every corner of the galaxy. Riker listened intently, his brow furrowed as he processed the gravity of the situation. As Jackson's tale unfolded, Riker came to a grim realization. The Talaxians posed a threat not just to the Denobulan Empire, but to all of humanity as well. He knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that he could not stand idly by while an entire civilization faced annihilation. In that moment, he made a solemn vow to help Jackson return to her people and to stand with them against the coming darkness. With a renewed sense of purpose, Riker and his crew prepared the Odyssey to escort Jackson back to the Denobulan homeworld. The ship hummed with activity as engineers fine-tuned the weapon systems and fortified the shields, readying the vessel for the perilous journey ahead. On the bridge, Riker stood tall, his eyes fixed on the screen as the stars streaked past, a man driven by duty, honor, and an unwavering commitment to the greater good. But even as the Odyssey set its course for the heart of the Denobulan Empire, fate had other plans in store. Without warning, the fabric of space itself seemed to tear asunder, and from the rift emerged a sight that sent chills down the spines of even the most battle-hardened crew members. A massive Talaxians fleet, its ships overflowing with weapons and pulsing with malevolent energy, burst into existence, descending upon New Eden like a swarm of vengeful locusts. The Odyssey, caught off guard but never unprepared, leaped into action. Riker barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos as the ship's advanced weapon systems roared to life. Beams of searing energy lanced out from the Odyssey, slicing through the enemy ranks with surgical precision. The ship's shields flared and crackled, absorbing the brunt of the Talaxians' onslaught as it positioned itself between the colony and the attacking fleet. On the planet's surface, the colonists of New Eden watched in awe and terror as the battle raged overhead, the sky alight with the fires of war. Hicks, his face grim, rallied his security forces, preparing for the worst even as he prayed for a miracle. And amidst the chaos, Princess Jackson emerged as an unexpected ally. Drawing upon her intimate knowledge of Talaxians' technology, she worked side by side with the Odyssey's crew, pointing out weaknesses in the enemy's defenses and suggesting daring tactical maneuvers. Riker, impressed by her quick thinking and unwavering courage, found himself drawn to the alien princess, a bond of mutual respect and understanding forming amidst the crucible of battle. But even with the Odyssey's superior technology and Jackson's invaluable insights, the tide of the battle began to turn against them. The Talaxians' fleet, vast and relentless, pressed their advantage, hammering the Odyssey with wave after wave of devastating attacks. The ship shuddered and groaned, its shields failing as consoles sparked and exploded, filling the bridge with acrid smoke. Riker, his face streaked with sweat and blood, knew that they could not hold out much longer. With a heavy heart, he gave the order to evacuate the colonists, knowing that their only chance for survival lay in abandoning the world they had worked so hard to build. As the people of New Eden streamed aboard the Odyssey, their faces etched with fear and sorrow, Riker couldn't help but feel the weight of their lives pressing down upon him. It was then, in that darkest hour, that Commander Hicks stepped forward, a glimmer of desperate hope in his eyes. He revealed to Riker the existence of a prototype weapon, a device he had been secretly developing to penetrate the Talaxians' formidable defenses. But the weapon was untested, its power untamed, and the risk of using it was great. It could very well destroy the Odyssey and all those aboard. Riker, faced with an impossible choice, found himself torn between the chance to strike a decisive blow against the enemy and the danger of sacrificing the lives under his protection. He looked to Jackson, seeking guidance, and in her eyes he saw the same fierce perseverance that burned within his own heart. With a nod, she conveyed her trust in him, her belief that he would make the right decision. And so, with the fate of New Eden and the lives of his crew hanging in the balance, Riker made the call. He ordered the deployment of Hicks's weapon, knowing that the future of both their peoples depended on its success. The prototype, a marvel of human ingenuity and desperation, surged to life, its energy building to a crescendo as it prepared to unleash its fury upon the Talaxians' fleet. The bridge of the Odyssey fell silent, every eye fixed on the display as the weapon's power reached its zenith. And then, with a blinding flash of light and a roar that shook the very fabric of space, the prototype unleashed its might. The Talaxian ships, caught in the maelstrom of energy, shuddered and convulsed, their shields shattering like glass under the onslaught. One by one, they erupted into balls of fire, their hulls twisting and warping as they were consumed by the weapon's unstoppable power. As the last of the enemy ships vanished into oblivion, a cheer erupted from the Odyssey's crew, a cry of triumph and relief that echoed through the battered corridors of the ship. Riker, his uniform torn and his face streaked with grime, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, knowing that they had done the impossible. They had saved New Eden, and in doing so, they had struck a blow against the Talaxians that would resonate throughout the galaxy. But even as the crew celebrated their hard-won victory, Riker and Jackson exchanged a knowing look. They understood that this was only the beginning, that the Talaxians' threat extended far beyond the borders of New Eden. They knew that the fate of their peoples, and indeed the fate of the entire galaxy, now rested on their shoulders. As the Odyssey limped away from the battlefield, its hull scarred and its crew weary but unbroken, Riker and Jackson began to plan their next move. They spoke of alliances, of the need to unite the Denobulan Empire and the United Earth Federation against the common enemy. They spoke of the challenges that lay ahead, of the sacrifices that would be required, and of the strength they would need to see it through. And as the stars streaked past the view screen, a glimmer of hope in the vast expanse of space, Riker and Jackson knew that they were embarking on a journey that would test them to their very limits. But they also knew that they would face it together, bound by a shared destiny and an unbreakable bond of trust and respect. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but with the courage of their conviction and the power of their alliance, they would not falter. They would fight, they would sacrifice, and they would prevail for the sake of their peoples, for the sake of the galaxy, and for the sake of all that was right and just in the universe. The Odyssey cut through the inky blackness of space, its hull still bearing the scars of the recent battle. On the bridge, Captain Riker stood with his arms crossed, studying the tactical display. Beside him, Princess Jackson leaned forward, her violet eyes scanning the data scrolling across the screen. "We're approaching the outer rim of the Denobulan system," Riker announced, his voice tight with tension. "Jackson, what can we expect?" The princess straightened, her face a mask of concentration. "The Talaxians will have fortified the main jump points. We'll need to use the lesser-known routes to avoid detection." Riker nodded, turning to his helmsman. "Lieutenant, plot a course through the Caraxian Nebula. It should mask our approach." As the ship altered course, Riker and Jackson retreated to the ready room. The captain called up a holographic display of the Denobulan homeworld, its once pristine surface now marred by Talaxian occupation. "Tell me about this weapon your father was developing," Riker said, his eyes never leaving the rotating image. Jackson's fingers danced across the console, zooming in on a nondescript mountain range. "It's a hyperspace disruptor. When activated, it creates a field that prevents ships from entering or exiting hyperspace within its range." Riker's eyebrows shot up. "That would change everything. We could trap the Talaxians' fleet, pick them off one by one." "Exactly," Jackson nodded. "But first we need to get to it." The door chimed and Commander Liam Weston entered, followed by Lieutenant Kira Nakamura. Riker quickly brought them up to speed on the situation. "A covert insertion?" Weston asked, his face grim. "It's risky, but it might be our only shot." Nakamura nodded in agreement. "I can modify our shuttle's cloaking device to mask our heat signature. It won't be perfect, but it should get us planetside undetected." As the team discussed the details of their plan, the ship suddenly lurched violently. Red alert klaxons blared as Riker's comm badge crackled to life. "Captain to the bridge! We've got company!" They rushed out, finding chaos on the bridge. The main view screen showed a swarm of Talaxian warships emerging from hyperspace, their weapons already charging. "Evasive maneuvers," Riker barked, gripping his chair as the ship banked hard to port. "Tactical, return fire." The Odyssey's phasers lashed out, scoring hits on the lead Talaxian vessel. But for every ship they damaged, two more seemed to take its place. Riker's mind raced, assessing their options. They couldn't fight their way through, not against these odds, but if they retreated, they might lose their only chance to recover the weapon. His eyes met Jackson's, and in that moment, he saw the same purpose reflected back at him. They both knew what had to be done. "Commander Weston, Lieutenant Nakamura," Riker called out over the din of battle. "Prepare for immediate departure. We're going in." As his officers hurried to comply, Riker turned to his first officer. "Mr. Shen, you have the bridge. Keep the Talaxians occupied as long as you can. We'll signal when we've secured the weapon." Jackson stepped forward, her chin raised. "I'm coming with you." Riker opened his mouth to protest, but the look in her eyes silenced him. He simply nodded, acknowledging her right to fight for her people. Minutes later, as the Odyssey engaged in a desperate battle above, a small, cloaked shuttle slipped away from its hangar bay. Inside, Riker, Jackson, Weston, and Nakamura sat in tense silence as they hurtled towards the occupied planet below. Riker glanced at Jackson, noting the white-knuckled grip she had on her seat. Despite the gravity of their situation, he felt a surge of admiration for her courage. "We'll get that weapon," he said softly, "and we'll save your people." Jackson met his gaze, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Our people, Captain. We're in this together now." As the shuttle pierced the planet's atmosphere, the team steeled themselves for the challenges ahead. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance, failure was not an option. The shuttle touched down in a secluded valley, its cloaking device shimmering as it powered down. As the team disembarked, weapons at the ready, the distant sound of Talaxian patrols echoed through the air. Their mission had begun. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud, its cloaking device shimmering as it powered down. Riker, Jackson, Weston, and Nakamura emerged, their weapons raised and senses alert. The distant rumble of Talaxian patrols echoed through the valley, a constant reminder of the danger that surrounded them. "This way," Jackson whispered, gesturing towards a narrow ravine. "The weapon facility is hidden beneath that ridge." They moved swiftly, using the natural cover of the terrain to avoid detection. As they approached the concealed entrance, Jackson placed her hand on a seemingly ordinary rock face. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a biometric scanner. "Genetic lock," she explained, pressing her palm against it. "Only members of the royal family can access this facility." The rock face shimmered and disappeared, revealing a sleek, high-tech corridor. They entered quickly, the entrance sealing behind them. Inside, they found Jackson's father, King Zalex, along with a team of Denobulan scientists. The reunion was brief but emotional, with Jackson embracing her father tightly. "We don't have much time," King Zalex said, his voice grave. "The Talaxians are closing in on our location." Riker stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we need to get you and your team to safety. The Odyssey can provide protection while we secure the weapon." The king nodded, turning to a nearby console. "The hyperspace disruptor is ready for transport. But be warned, Captain, its power is immense and unpredictable. Use it wisely." As Weston and Nakamura began preparations to move the device, a violent explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared, and security feeds showed Talaxian forces breaching the outer defenses. "They've found us!" Jackson exclaimed, drawing her weapon. Riker's mind raced, assessing their options. "Weston, Nakamura, get the king and his team to the shuttle. Jackson and I will hold off the Talaxians and secure the weapon." The next few minutes were a blur of action. Riker and Jackson fought side by side, their movements in perfect sync as they repelled wave after wave of Talaxian soldiers. The weapons control room became a battleground, filled with the acrid smell of weapons fire and the cries of the wounded. Just as it seemed they might be overwhelmed, Weston's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we've got the king and his team aboard. The shuttle's ready for immediate evac." Riker nodded to Jackson. "Time to go." They made a final push, clearing a path to the weapon. As Jackson initiated the transport sequence, Riker provided covering fire, his phaser cutting down Talaxians left and right. With a blinding flash, the hyperspace disruptor dematerialized. Riker grabbed Jackson's arm, and they sprinted for the exit, the sound of pursuing Talaxians close behind. They burst out of the facility just as the shuttle decloaked, its hatch open and waiting. Leaping aboard, Riker shouted, "Go, go, go!" The shuttle rocketed skyward, weaving through a hail of Talaxian fire. As they broke atmosphere, the massive form of the Odyssey came into view, its shields flaring as it engaged the enemy fleet. Aboard the Odyssey's bridge, Riker and Jackson found controlled chaos. The ship shuddered under repeated impacts as Mr. Shen barked orders, coordinating their defense. "Status report," Riker demanded, taking his place in the captain's chair. "Shields at 62%, Multiple hull breaches on decks 6 through 9, Shen replied. We're outgunned and outnumbered, sir. Jackson stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Not for long. Prepare to activate the hyperspace disruptor on my mark. As the crew worked feverishly to integrate the denobulan technology, the battle raged on. The Odyssey danced through space, its phasers lashing out at the Talaxian ships, but for every enemy vessel disabled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Disruptor online, Nakamura called out. Jackson's fingers flew across the console, making final adjustments. Now! A pulse of energy erupted from the Odyssey, expanding outward in a shimmering wave. As it washed over the Talaxian fleet, their ships suddenly lurched, their engines flaring erratically. It worked, Jackson breathed, a fierce smile on her face. They can't enter hyperspace. They're trapped. Riker leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with drive. This is our chance. All weapons, fire at will. The Odyssey surged forward, its weapons blazing. Without their ability to make quick jumps or call for reinforcements, the Talaxian ships began to fall one by one. As the tide of battle turned, Riker felt a moment of triumph, but it was short-lived. A massive energy signature suddenly appeared on their sensors, dwarfing anything they'd seen before. Sir, Shen called out, his voice tense, we're detecting a new ship entering the system. It's huge. The view screen shifted, revealing a monstrous vessel that seemed to blot out the stars themselves. Its hull bristled with weapons, and even from a distance, the sense of menace was palpable. Jackson's face went pale. That's the Talaxian flagship, General Kazak's ship. As the behemoth vessel approached, its weapons charging, Riker and Jackson exchanged a look. They both knew that despite their recent victory, the real battle was only just beginning. The Talaxian flagship opened fire, its first salvo nearly overwhelming the Odyssey's weakened shields. Riker gripped his chair, shouting orders as the ship bucked and heaved under the assault. Evasive maneuvers, concentrate all fire on their forward weapons array. But even as the Odyssey fought back, it was clear they were outmatched. The Talaxian ship's superior firepower and defenses made it seem invincible. Suddenly, a proximity alarm blared. Before anyone could react, a blinding light filled the bridge. When it faded, Riker found himself face to face with a squad of heavily armed Talaxian soldiers, their weapons trained on the crew. A towering figure stepped forward, his scarred face twisted in a cruel smile. Captain Riker, General Kazak growled, I've been looking forward to meeting you. As Riker was roughly seized and dragged away, he caught one last glimpse of Jackson. Her eyes burned with a mixture of fury and fear, but there was something else there too, a silent promise that this wasn't over. The last thing Riker saw before a hood was thrown over his head was Jackson being restrained, her voice rising in defiance as she was separated from her father. Then darkness engulfed him, and he felt himself being transported off the Odyssey. Riker's mind raced as he was led away. He knew the fate of 2 civilizations now hung in the balance, and somehow he would have to find a way to turn the tables on Kazak before it was too late. The years following the decisive victory over the Talaxians brought a new era of peace and prosperity to both the Denobulan Empire and Earth. The once distant civilizations now stood united, their alliance forged in the crucible of war. On Denobula Prime, the capital city gleamed under the light of 3 suns. Massive holo displays showcased scenes of human and Denobulan cooperation, joint scientific ventures, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense exercises. The streets buzzed with excitement as delegates from both worlds gathered for the 5th anniversary celebration of their alliance. In the Grand Hall of the Royal Palace, Queen Jackson stood before a mixed audience of humans and Denobulans. Her regal bearing commanded attention, but those who knew her well could see the weight of responsibility in her eyes. 5 years ago, we faced extinction, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. Today, we stand stronger than ever, thanks to the courage and sacrifice of both our peoples. As she spoke, Jackson's gaze fell upon Captain Riker, seated in the front row. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. The connection they had forged during the war had only deepened with time, though both knew the complexities of their positions kept them apart. But beneath the veneer of celebration, tensions simmered. In the shadowy corners of the palace, a group of Denobulan hardliners huddled in hushed conversation. "This cannot continue," one whispered, his face twisted in disgust. "These humans, with their primitive ways, they're a threat to everything we've built." Another nodded in agreement. "We must act now before it's too late. The Queen is blinded by her fondness for the human captain. She cannot see the danger." As the celebration continued, unaware of the growing discord, a Denobulan aide approached Riker. "Captain, your presence is requested in the royal study. Urgent matter." Riker excused himself and followed the aide through winding corridors. He found Jackson waiting, her face grave. "Will, we have a problem," she said, dispensing with formalities. "There's a growing faction pushing for Earth's isolation. They want all human outposts dismantled, your world quarantined." Riker's eyes hardened. "After everything we've accomplished together? Jackson, you can't let this happen." "I'm trying," she replied, frustration evident in her voice. "But my advisors, they're afraid. They say Earth isn't ready for our level of technology, that it could lead to catastrophe." Before Riker could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. The floor shook as distant explosions rocked the city. "We're under attack," Jackson exclaimed, rushing to a nearby console. Security feeds showed chaos in the streets as Talaxian ships rained fire from above. Riker's training kicked in. "We need to get you to safety now." They sprinted through the palace, dodging falling debris. As they reached the evacuation point, a massive explosion tore through the wall. Riker saw the deadly energy pulse heading straight for Jackson. Without hesitation, he threw himself in front of her. The blast caught him full in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Jackson cried out, cradling his broken body in her arms. "Will, no, stay with me," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Riker coughed, blood trickling from his lips. With trembling hands, he pressed a small data chip into her palm. "Take this," he wheezed, "Earth's most advanced tech. Use it. Bridge the gap between our peoples." "I can't do this without you," Jackson sobbed. Riker managed a weak smile. "Yes, you can. You must. Promise me. You'll fight for the Alliance. It's the only way." His voice trailed off as his eyes closed for the last time. Jackson clutched him tightly, her anguished scream drowned out by the sounds of battle raging around them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.